Hello everyone, and welcome to Board on a Shelf. I'm Antonio, and yeah, life has just been a little busy lately, but I've still been playing a lot of board games, and I'm actually getting ready to close on a house, so this studio space is going to change, hopefully for the better, but it will definitely be a work in progress once that move happens. But I'm here today to tell you about my top games of 2024, specifically my top 15. I was going to do top 10, but I was like, or I can do 15 and try to make it faster so that I can give you guys more info and also games some more light. You know, there are great games outside of my top 10 that I also want to talk about. Interesting thing about this list is this is going to be my top 15 games as of the release of this video. I had written down at the end of last year my top 15 list, and that list has changed. And the reason I didn't talk about it then was because I knew it was going to change, and there were a lot of games that I was going to play in January and a little bit of February that I knew would make their way onto the list. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to tell you my top 15 and also tell you where it was ranked as of the end of last year. So with that, let's get started with my number 15. All right, my number 15 is Lord of the Rings Duel. And last year it was ranked number 10. So it has gone, not last year, but at the end of last year it was ranked number 10, so 2 months ago. And the reason it has dropped isn't because it's worse, I just haven't wanted to play it. Last year when I was playing it a lot, so I was like, oh yeah, easy number 10, this is great. Just as good as it was the first time I played it, not any more interesting, but good, and it's solid. So I think just having played it enough times, it synced a little bit, not even that much. So Lord of the Rings Duel is a 2-player drafting game where you're where you're drafting these cards from a center area, and you are trying to make income, get points, chain cards together to get cards in the future. It's slightly an area control game. One of you is playing as the Free Peoples, one of you is playing as the Dark Forces of Middle Earth, and you are competing with each other it's a race basically, to get points. So it's great. Paul loves Lord of the Rings. I like Lord of the Rings a lot. So it's good. Definitely check it out if you're looking for a somewhat fast 2-player head-to-head battler. It's not battler, but head-to-head game. It's very good. So that's my number 15, Lord of the Rings Duel. All right, number 14 this year or 2024, is Rebirth by Reiner Knizia. I think it's right here somewhere. Right there. Rebirth is not on my list. I hadn't played it yet, so I knew that I wanted to, and I wanted to get a copy of it, and I was able to. And it's a game where there's a big board, and on your turn, you place a tile on the board, and you're trying to chain like symbols together. You're trying to surround these various buildings to score you points. You're constantly getting these private objectives, and it's like, okay, I want the most coastal regions covered, or okay, I want to have the most presence around this specific cathedral. But the game is so simple, and you're just putting a tile on the board, and it's awesome. That's it. Your turn is so simple, but the board is so open. So at the beginning of the game, everything seems really intimidating, but ultimately you can't really go wrong in the beginning of the game. But as people are putting more tiles out, there's only one tile per space on the board. So it'll start to fill up, and you'll start to see like, oh, now I have to decide between these 3 things as opposed to these 50 things. So as you play, the strategy will narrow down, and it's just solid. Like, I love to teach it because it's just one thing you do on your turn. You just put a tile out there, you draw cards, and the cards will tell you like, hey, go for this. And it gives you good direction, and it's just simple. I think it's going to replace Babylonia for me, which is another Reiner Knizia game. Babylonia is also very simple, but there's just like some slight overhead rules they're so simple, but there's just enough to make it slightly less playable or less easy to bring to the table than Rebirth. So Rebirth is great. That's my number 14. Number 13 this year is Flip 7, which is Blackjack the Board Game Plus. This was number 12, so it stayed in the same spot. But Flip 7 is awesome. I play it with my family, I've played it with my friends, and it's just it's just 21, it's just blackjack, it's the same thing, but there's enough spin on it that makes it exciting. The way you bust in the game is if you get two numbers that are the same, and they go from what was 0 to 12, I believe. There's 1 in the deck, there's 3 3s, there's 12 12s, and you're trying to get the highest set in front of you. So you're going to add up all the numbers in front of you, and that's going to be your score for the round whenever you decide to stay. If you bust, you lose everything and your score is 0. But in order to bust, you can't get to the same number. You can't get a duplicate. So the 12s are great because it's 12 points, right? It's a higher number, and that increases your sum. However, there are 12 12s. It's the most numerous card in the deck, or most populous card in the deck. If you get a 12, you have a high score, but you're more likely to bust, or you're more likely to get a 12. So it's just great. It's fun. People like blackjack. It's simple. It's push your luck. I love push your luck. This one is small, but it's still great. So it's my number 13, Flip 7. Number 12 is a game that I picked up from Barnes & Noble of all places. It's called Creature Caravan. Creature Caravan is not on my list from December because I hadn't played it yet. And it wasn't even on my radar, actually. But it is just a pure dice rolling engine builder. You're moving your caravan along this board, just doop, 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 moving it along. You're collecting people that give you special powers. It's very combo-tastic. It's very resource management. You're fighting zombies along the way, but there's just something so simple and pretty. It's cute. There's something fun about it, and it's just cozy, and it's very solitaire. So I played with Paul a couple times, and I didn't really care about what he was doing, and not that it was just mean, but kind of think about like Wingspan, right? Wingspan's a game where it kind of matters what other people are taking and what other people are doing in the common areas, but ultimately your head's looking here and you're trying to maximize all your combos, where you have a card that only scores if you get 5 more water creatures or something like that. So it's very cool. Your turns are simple. You're rolling dice. These dice do various things for you. And yeah, it's great. Check out Creature Caravan. I really liked it. All right, my number 11 is a small card game that was number 8 as of December. And this is Gnar. So Gnar is such a good game. Even just saying it right now, I'm like, should I put Gnar higher? I don't know, maybe. But Gnar is also a slight engine builder. On your turn, you either play a card or spend cards to acquire like a land card, which gives you points and adds to your income. But what's really cool about this game is there are different colors of people, whereas you put down a card in front of you, whatever cards you have of that same color, they're all going to give you various benefits. And whenever you add a card to that stack, you're going to get the benefits of all the previous cards of that color that you played. It's kind of weird to explain, but it's such a cool thing. It's rewarding to be like, oh, I played this blue card and it gives me a point. Your next turn comes around. Oh, I have another blue card. I'm going to play this blue card that gives me a helmet. And now I get a helmet and the point from the card that I played earlier. And it just keeps on firing up the line. In order to buy a landmark, or I forget what they're called, you have to spend the cards you've been playing in front of you. So you're not just playing these cards in front of you to get things, but you eventually have to spend them because they'll have color requirements. And you'll spend those cards, get a landmark. It'll give you more points. And it's a race, which is cool. It's a race to 30 points, could be 40, but it's a race. So you're trying to maximize what you can do. And yes, you're using your engine to get resources and you're using your engine to get more cards, but ultimately you're after points. And there are many ways to get them. And this game's just so quick and the art's beautiful and small and it plays well at all player counts. Gnar is awesome. It dropped just because, again, it's a smaller card game and there's not a lot of depth to keep you coming back and back and back. So I've played it a bunch and that's probably why it's dropped a little bit and I'm not going to stop playing it. But yeah, I feel like I've seen everything, but that doesn't take away from how great the mechanisms are in the game. So that's Gnar. Number 10 is Let's Go to Japan. Let's Go to Japan was number 7. And Let's Go to Japan is awesome. It is a drafting game where you are planning a trip to Japan and it is icon soup. So you are trying on each day to get the most of the icon assigned to that day. And there's a bunch of other things to keep in mind. You're trying to get a bunch of endgame scoring stuff that has to do with symbols as well. And the last card you play on a day, which is the face-up card that has the whole card showing, you will score that condition at the bottom, and you are trying to meet that condition throughout the game, and it's a lot of planning in advance. And the scoring at the end of the game is so fascinating. You go from Monday to Sunday scoring every day and all the symbols that you have, and they only count for the previous ones that you've played. So as you get to Monday, there's nothing before it, so you can't, if this thing scores for symbols that appear on Wednesday, you won't score them because you haven't gotten to Wednesday yet. It's really cool. Drafting isn't my favorite mechanism. I don't hate drafting, and I also don't like that I have the tendency to do it. So sometimes drafting doesn't put me in the best gamer mindset, and I don't become the most courteous of players. But Let's Go to Japan is really good. It dropped because other things are up there. Ultimately, it's somewhat light. You can definitely play it with your family, but it's kind of a hard one to explain. It definitely requires a second play for you to feel like you know what's going on, I think, because the scoring is just a little bit abstracted for how thematic the game is. But yeah, that's Let's Go to Japan, number 10. Number 9 has actually gone up. Number 9 is The Veil of Eternity, which was number 11 as of December. And Veil of Eternity is awesome. I feel like it's Magic the Gathering in a small box, and I love that. I used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering, and I eventually stopped because it got too competitive and too expensive, and I'm just not a deck builder. I like precons, but this feels like that to me. It's a precon that everybody's not pass around drafting, but everybody's taking cards from, and you're playing them in front of you in this little tableau, and you're trying to make combos. But it's cool because the way the combos work, they're very strategic, right? And it just feels like there's so many combos. It doesn't feel like there's a limited number of paths in the game. It seems like you can go for dragons one game, or you can go for the blue creatures this game, or you can go for the money economy. It's just really cool, and one of the cool things that I like about it is you can only hold up to 4 money chips. There's a 1, a 3, and a 6. When you get more money and there's no change that you can make for the money that you spend, you are kind of stuck with this puzzle of, okay, what money do I get rid of? What denomination of coin do I get rid of? And there are cards that break those rules. There's cards that increase that hand size. There's cards that just change everything about it, and it's great. I just think it's really fun, and if I have friends who like games with keywords, right, like Magic, then this is a really good way to scratch that itch. So Veil of Eternity is great, and it's gone up because as I've played it more, I've seen all the possibilities and all the strategies you can go for. So that one's really great. Veil of Eternity is number 9. Definitely check it out if you're at all a fan of trading card games. It's trading card games in a box, so check it out. So number 8 is interesting. Number 8 is SETI. And SETI is the game that I was by far the most excited for of last year. And I love Arnak. I love Kutnahora. They're both from the same companies. SETI, which is funny, I'm gonna say it didn't do it for me. It just didn't, but it's still my number 8. And the reason I'm saying that is just because my expectations were so high. And number 8 is still great. And it's honestly up there because I want to play it again, and probably again and again. And it's one of those games where I play it and I don't feel good about myself while I'm playing it because the economy is so tight. You are taking a variety of actions. Some of the actions put probes into space. Some of the actions cause it to orbit a planet, which will give you points and give you income. Other will let you land on the planet, which will also give you points and let you research a specimen. There's a bunch of small things in the game that come together very well. Like there's a couple alien species that throughout the game, when people have collected enough specimens by doing all the various actions successfully, then you will reveal these aliens and they will throw a wrench in the game and add new scoring conditions. So there's just like a lot of good bones to the game. There's a lot of really solid Euro elements, and for such a heavy Euro game, I think it's impressive how thematic it is and how it does feel like you're running a space program. It's tight and there's a lot of card play. It's great, and I see why people love it. Yeah, I totally get it, and I love it. I mean, it's number 8. I was expecting it to be like a combo-tastic Euro game, like kind of like a Stefan Feld game where you play and it's just constant rewards, and it's like, I'm gonna orbit, and then I'm gonna land, and I'm gonna research this alien, and then I'm gonna do all this research and get a bunch of income, and I'm gonna end up at the end of the game with like a bunch of money, and it's just gonna feel like I can do so many things. It's gonna feel sandboxy, and it is sandboxy, but the economy is so tight that I never feel satisfied with well, okay, that's not true. The economy is so tight that everything you do is so dependent on your resources. Every card that you play is important, and there's a lot of endgame scoring stuff to keep in mind, but it is a game that is driven by cards, which I wasn't expecting. And the income engine is small. So it is very satisfying when you pull off a really good turn, because the resources don't allow you to do that often, if at all. So SETI is a great Euro design, but for me, I keep on like criticizing it. I like it, right? It's number 8. But for me, I was expecting something else, and I actually do expect this to go up, because with multiple plays, I think I'm going to get better at the game, and it's nice. It's nice to feel challenged by a game like that. So SETI is great. If you like big old strategy monkeys, go check it out. Number 7 was number 5 a while ago. This is Windmill Valley. And Windmill Valley is a board and dice game designed by Danny Garcia. And his games are hit or miss for me. I don't have any interest in playing Daitoshi. I have sold Arborea. I love Barcelona, and I love Windmill Valley. But on your turn, you are spinning these little cogs, which is really cool, and you get to choose, it's gonna line up 2 actions, and you get to choose one or the other. Sometimes you get to choose both, but that comes later with upgrading your wheel. And it's gonna let you do a bunch of actions. So it's either gonna let you build a windmill, Windmill Valley. It's going to let you go to the boat market and get resources. It's gonna let you get helpers, which will give you passive abilities. You can get new scoring conditions for yourself at the end of the game. It's just a really good medium light Euro game where it has all these mechanisms that you're familiar with, and they're simple. They're simplified in a way that makes them accessible and not overwhelming. I really enjoy a Euro game where you can play it and you can be in it and thinky and trying to, maximize what you can do. But at the end of it, you don't feel like there's smoke coming out of your ears and you're like, oh, that was a lot. Windmill Valley doesn't feel like that, but I feel like it gives you the satisfaction that you want from a Euro game without hurting your brain. And sometimes I want my brain to hurt. Sometimes I want that challenge, but Windmill Valley seems forgiving enough. The reason it's dropped is because there's Euro games that I have liked more, but I do think this one will continue to drop off. I don't think it'll leave my collection anytime soon, but I just think I've played it multiple times now, and it just kind of feels the same. There are little powers you can get that make you feel a little different, and there are different lanes you can go down, but it's one of those games where you have to kind of do a little bit of everything. So every game you're going to be doing a little bit of everything. There's not like a real lane you can focus on, so it does feel a little samey, but it's good. And if you're looking for a game that feels Euro-y without the brain burn of a Euro, I think Windmill Valley is a great choice. My number 6 was number 4 a while ago, and that is Harmonies. Harmonies is fantastic. I know it's a lot of people's number 1. I think on average it was the number 1 game for a lot of content creators and big names in board games, and I understand why. I really do. I mean, people just tend to like these games, right? They like Cascadia, they like Calico, they like Harmonies, they like Azul. I don't know, Azul's not really count, but they have these similar structures of like, create these patterns, here's your scoring conditions, and it's abstracted. There's drafting from the center, and it's really good. And Harmonies, I don't know, I think whoever marketed this game did a great job, because the name, the art style, it all just fits together in this package that is just fantastic. Like, This is a very abstract game that they did a really good job at putting a relaxing animal, cool art theme on it. Throughout the game, you are taking terrain tiles from this center area, like Azul style. You take the whole pile, you put it on your board, and you're trying to create patterns based on the scoring conditions that you have. And these scoring conditions are habitats for various animals. So you're trying to create a tree forest for koalas, or a desert oasis for desert animals. And it's just very nice, and I've taught it to a lot of people. They really like it. There's just like a nice 3D element. There's a nice puzzle element to it that's not too hard to grasp, and it's just great. There's a couple barriers of learning, because if you're really trying to show this to somebody who doesn't play a lot of board games, I think they'll get it. They will, but they might not get it till like halfway, which is fine. And I think that happens a lot, but there's like a certain order that the terrain can be stacked, and it's kind of weird to hear, but once you start to see it, it makes sense. It's like there's a little bit of a barrier, but it's just so peaceful and it's not stressful. Like, you have these decisions to make that are important. Very rarely does it feel overwhelming, and like it breaks the barrier of being a nice puzzle game. I'm gonna keep coming back to it. I think of all of the little puzzle games, like I said earlier, it's probably my favorite. Not quite as accessible as Cascadia. I think it's a little bit of a step up, but I think it's a step up in a good way for me. So Harmonies is really good. All right, my number 5 was my number 3 a few months ago, and that is Arcs. So Arcs is awesome. Arcs is an area control war space game that has a trick-taking action mechanism. And if you're watching this, maybe you've heard a lot about it. A lot of people are talking about it. It was highly, highly anticipated. It is the same people who made the game Root, which I've talked about in a previous video, but Root is a very highly regarded war game. And this is easier to learn, easier to play, space. It's very different, but it's good, and I really enjoy it. And I think the actions are simple, the combat is simple. There's a lot of competing for these planets and raiding planets, but you have to be careful, because if you raid an oil planet, then the oil guild will hate you, and you can't use oil anymore to move around the board quicker. So there's just like a lot of these tiny elements that make the game feel so cohesive, and you can feel it, like it makes sense. It brings the whole thing together. I'm gonna have a hard time explaining the mechanisms in this game, because there's just, they're pretty simple, right? It's building a ship, moving a fleet of ships, battling, drafting a card, influencing the court so that you can eventually acquire a new card that gives you a special ability and gives you symbols. The most interesting part of the game is the card system, the trick-taking system, and how cool it is, right? So like, it's a trick-taking game. So somebody will play a card in a suit, and you are inclined to play matching suits or take the lead, take the initiative. And with the initiative, another awesome thing is how the game is scored. So with that initiative, you can play a card to declare an ambition, and an ambition will change how that round is scored, and that determines everything for that round. That determines what gives you points. So if you're going for war and you want to destroy ships and take them as trophies, or take captives and keep them as captives, you want to score that, and you're going to try to get that to be one of the 3 or maximum 3 ambitions that can be scored for that round. And if you don't, you kind of wasted your time, and hopefully you can score it next round. But the game is just, it's so intense, and there's so much competition, there's so much brain, like you're trying to pick up what other people are doing. You're trying to see, oh, this person's going for this, which means they're going to try to get that ambition scored. How can I compete with them, or how can I take that opportunity away from them? If you don't like war games, you won't like it. If you do like war games, maybe it's not war enough for you, but I think it lies in a perfect middle ground, and it's fairly accessible. So Arcs is great. My number 4 was number 2 a couple months ago, and so it's dropped 2 spaces, but it's still great, and this is Nova Roma. So I did a video earlier about Nova Roma saying that it was a strategy game that I'm loving right now. And at the time, it wasn't really getting any buzz, and I still feel like it's not getting that much buzz. I've seen it on, like the Dice Towers lists and other people's lists, but Novoroma is so cool. It's a worker placement game that is all about grids. You are putting a worker on this 4x4 grid, and this grid has rows and columns. Each of the 4 columns has an action associated with it, and each of the 4 rows has an action associated with it. So wherever you put your worker on that 4x4 grid, it will be in a column of an action and a row of an action, and you get to take those actions. The sweet little spin on it is that your actions can get stronger as you place more workers. So if I put a worker here on this action, and then in a future turn I put another one in the same column for this action, the strength for that action is now 2, since I have 2 workers there. And it could be more, but it just adds such a cool element. You can see what other people are doing at the table. You can see that they're trying to build up this action. They're trying to get really strong here. So how can I compete with them, or how can I block them? The actions all relate to different mini games that will score you points in various ways. The worker placement is sweet, and it's political, and you can feel the tension at the table, knowing what somebody else is going to go for and seeing what they're trying to do, and how can you block them but also benefit you. If you haven't played it, try it, or watch even a playthrough of it, just so you can see how that worker placement stuff works. It's really competitive in an awesome way. So that's Novoroma, number 4. My number 3 was not on my list, or it was on my radar, but I hadn't played it yet as of December of last year, and that is Andromeda's Edge. Andromeda's Edge is a game that I knew I was going to like. It is also a worker placement game. It is a big Euro space worker placement game where you spend your turns either putting a ship out to do the action of the tile you place it on, planet or base that you put it on, or you bring your ships back. And both of those have a ton of different elements to it, but ultimately that's the core of the game. And whenever you're putting out a ship, there are many things that can happen. You have a lot of choices. You can choose which ship you're going to play, and each of the ships does different things. So there's a ship that's special, or that's more powerful in combat, or there's a ship that's better at exploring, and you can put it out further. So whenever you place your first worker, the other ships you place after that to activate other spots on the board, they have to be within range of that ship. So the first ship you place kind of determines your network of where you can start placing other workers. So there are some that can go farther, so you can explore further. There are some that stay close, but they're tanky and they can fight. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. In this Euro worker placement game, there is combat, and there are raiders, like aliens, that come in and attack, and they can attack you and the other players. And if there's a combat happening, everyone's fighting. And you can escalate, you can call in reinforcements, and you can fight. The combat works is so clean. I love it. It's not complicated. Everybody just counts up how much dice they get from their ships, and the ships give you various dice, like the battle ones I said, those will give you more dice. And you roll them, you re-roll if you have targeting. So if your targeting is 3, any dice below a 3, you get re-rolled. You're trying to roll and get the highest numbers, and whoever has the highest consecutive numbers will win the combat, and they get a reward, or they get to move up on this track. One of the biggest scoring elements of the game, and it took me a while to realize this, but it is the tracks at the top of the board. So throughout all the various actions that you're taking, they will eventually allow you to move up these tracks, and those tracks are what give you the points. So at the end of the game, you get points for them. Throughout the game, when events are triggered by a bunch of different things, one of the tracks will be scored immediately. So you have ways of looking at that deck and seeing what's going to be scored, so you can tailor your strategy for when that event is revealed. There's a whole lot. Oh my gosh. The other thing is, when you recall your workers, you will throughout the game be building up this engine and this tableau in front of you of a bunch of rewards and actions that you can take. So you're not only getting things when you put out your workers, but when you bring them back, you're going to start firing off these little modules, and they're going to give you a bunch of resources, a bunch of things, so that when you go back to put your workers out, you have all these things. You have money, you have energy, you have nanocarbons, you have ice. It's just really cool how all these elements fit together, and how the actions are so mechanical, right? Put a worker, bring them back, fire off your engine. But there's so many like little thematic things that it really does feel like you're exploring in it. The combat you're competing with people and there's these tracks and who's going to be the most dominant or who's going to have the most science or who's going to have the most whatever. It has a civilization aspect to it. So Andromeda's Edge is my number 3. Production amazing, game amazing. My number 2 was also not on the list, and this is actually a game that I like just played, and it is Civolution by Stefan Feld. It is so good. I want to play it more. I want to play it again. I want to play it all the time. I'm learning that Stefan Feld is probably my favorite designer. I played this game, and after the first time playing it, I was so impressed with how simple the actions are, how it's a dice game, and how it feels like Castles of Burgundy a little bit, and how it feels like this game a little bit, and that game a little bit, how it feels like Marrakesh a little bit, how it feels like Bora Bora a little bit. All these Stefan Feld games, it just feels like it takes elements from all of his games, and it throws them into the civilization game, and it's awesome. More plays are definitely necessary because there's so many things you can do in the game that it's really hard to see where the points come from. And it tells you, right, there's some scoring objectives for each round, which is a lot like Castles of Burgundy. But it's hard to understand, like, especially in your first playthrough, it's like, okay, this is going to score the orange track. It's like, okay, cool. So orange track is worth points. How the heck do I move up on the orange track? And as you play the game more, you kind of start to see what that comes from. There's a lot of cards. The cards go on this really interesting, I think it's called your, I don't remember. Board? I mean, it's your board. Doesn't matter. The cards will go in front of you on this really cool, like, stair-step card holder thing. And you'll play a variety of cards and tiles that will just start scoring at the end of the game, and they'll give you various benefits throughout the game when you play them as well. They'll move you up on tracks, or they'll give you power over your dice, or they'll give you a bunch of things. There's so many things to do in this game. And I feel like I was so confused when I heard about this game because I feel like nobody really explained what was going on very well. So I would watch a video about it and I'd be like, they're like, it's so good. It's so good. You're doing dice things, you're getting cards, you're exploring, you're moving up on tracks. But I never really feel like I understood what the game was, and I'm realizing that I'm also doing a bad job. But that's okay, because there's a lot to explore in this game. But if you like games that use dice to take actions, if you like games where it feels like every game you can do something slightly different, you can pick a path and try and focus it. It has so much replayability. There's not too much competition, which is nice. Like, it's just enough interaction between you guys that are playing without being mean. It's like there's a lot of endgame scoring, so you know what you can like look forward and see, like, okay, I'm gonna try and go for this. There's huge decks of cards that you don't really even see that many cards of. So I would say it would take you probably like 20 plays to see all the cards unless you're just reading through them. So every game's you're gonna be like, whoa, oh, I didn't realize I could do that. There's just so much to this game that I'm so excited to explore. It's gonna be up there for me in all my top list of all time. It's great. Civolution is awesome. My number 1 game of 2024 was also my number 1 game in December, at the end of last year. And despite having played all these really cool games, this one is still the best to me. And it's close with Civolution, it is. I debated it, but I decided that this one would stay there because I really do just enjoy it a lot. And as I play Civolution more, we'll see what happens. But this one I've played enough and I want to play more that it's just consistent. And this is Nucleum. Nucleum is, I don't know, as Rory said it, he said, you know, if you're looking for something light and you're playing Nucleum and you're looking for something light, play Brass. And it's true, they have the same groundwork to them. You can tell Nucleum is inspired by it. But Nucleum is a route building game where you are taking actions with these action tiles and you're trying to do a bunch of things. You're trying to build routes, you're trying to build buildings, you're trying to energize these buildings. And in all of this, there's just this cool, tight, but not too tight economy of energy and money. And you are expanding on this board and you're competing with each other, and pretty heavily, I would say, to put buildings in these spaces before other people, or to use these turbines before, or to get to this uranium, before other people. And you're trying to cultivate these resources and then use those resources to energize your buildings, which will go through different railways, and you can put them through other people's, or you can put them through yours, or you can move them around the board in various ways. But it's just cool. That element's pretty simple. It's very similar to Brass if you play Brass. It's thinky, and it's an area control game, and it's competitive, and building the railroads isn't easy, because in order to do that, to expand your network, you have to give up an action tile and a worker, and it's a lot. Those are valuable resources. There's just this cool flow of actions, and it's interesting in a game to see actions, how they are in this game, to see actions as a resource that you can spend abstractly to do other things. The end game scoring is awesome too. There's this whole track that you're moving up on that will score you intermittently throughout the game and at the end of the game as well, that is variable. So sometimes buildings are worth more, sometimes railroads are worth more, and it's fantastic. There's also a technology track to the game where everyone has their own unique set. It's an asymmetric game. There's a unique set of technologies that you can research throughout the game that will give you special powers, and you can look at it at the beginning of the game and say, okay, my technologies are built around building railroads, or they're built around moving up on track whatever. So it gives you a direction to go, which is important, because there's, much like Civolution, there's a lot of different things you can do. That asymmetric power will give you a slight angle to come at the game from, and it works together so well. I got the expansion. I'm excited to try that. If there's another one, I'll try that. And this game it's so good. It's great. Nucleum is awesome. That is my top 15 games of 2024. I hope this video format wasn't too confusing. I wanted to share you my top 15 now, and also tell you where it was earlier, and tell you why I haven't released this video yet, on top of the other things that are going on in life. But I did want some more time to really look at it and make sure that this list that I gave was a good depiction of the games that I wanted to play, have played. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'm Antonio, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.